Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, am I really living the life I was meant to? Welcome to Female Fluence, where we stop waiting for permission and start remembering our power. I am Pearl Mashur, a mom, educator, and a women's empowerment coach, and this is a space for honest conversations about growth, purpose, and becoming who you truly are. Here, we wake up to ourselves. We release the guilt, reclaim our confidence, and rise with grace, truth, and a little bit of fire. If something in you is whispering, there's more, take the self-reflection quiz at femalefluence.com and see where you are in your journey. Because you're not here to play small, you're here to rise fully. Today, we're diving into a conversation that challenges outdated narratives and reclaims a word too often misunderstood: ambition. Women who have shown drive, vision, and leadership have been labeled too much, too assertive, too aggressive, and too ambitious for too long. But what if ambition isn't something to tone down? What if something to embrace as a force for good growth and change? Embracing ambition as a woman in leadership means stepping into visibility, claiming space, and leading with strength and authenticity. It's about developing a leadership style rooted in personal experience, collaborative power, and the resilience to overcome the unique obstacles women face, especially the persistent barriers of gender-based discrimination. The truth is, no two leaders are the same. Successful leadership doesn't come from limitation, but from evolution, trying on different styles, learning through trial and error, and eventually creating an approach grounded in your unique strengths. And for women, that journey is not just professional, it's deeply personal. When more women lead, we all benefit. Research shows that women leaders boost productivity, strengthen teams, foster fairness, and inspire greater organizational commitment. Today's guest knows what it means to reclaim ambition and rise. She's here to share her story, her leadership path, and how she's helping others lead with confidence and clarity. Jenny Mitchell is a dynamic leadership coach and the Chief Visionary Officer of Chavender. She partners with not-for-profit leaders to drive meaningful change, one mission at a time. She's also an accomplished speaker, executive coach, and fundraising expert. With an unconventional journey from classical pianist to leadership planner, Jenny brings in creativity, courage, and clarity to women's leadership. She's also the author of Embracing Ambition, Empowering Women to Step Out, Be Seen, and Lead. Jenny also hosts the Underdog Leadership podcast, highlighting unconventional paths to leadership and power of showing up with authenticity. Her work centers on empowering women to embrace their ambition, own their voice, and lead purposefully. Jenny, I'm so excited to have you on Female Fluence. Welcome to my show. I'm excited to dive in. So let's go ahead and start.
You bet. And what an introduction. And I had goosebumps right away, Pearl. We are in the same pond. We are sharing vision and passion together and can't wait to share a bit with your listeners.
Yes, definitely. So let's start off with, if you can share the story of your leadership, what inspired to step into this leadership, and how has that path shaped in who you are today?
Ooh, well, if you go back to the beginning, you would meet young Jenny, curious, busy, active, strong-willed, determined. I think the word my mother used was fearless. And she encountered a world where that was not acceptable. It was not okay to be the one that put their hand up all the time in class. It was not okay to always have the answers. It was not okay to question. And I think we all go through those mid-teen years learning that we need to dampen, we need to soften, at least the era that I grew up in as a woman in my 50s. Let's just put it out there for the radio, for the podcast. And I learned how to survive in a world with blankets on, with things that covered me up, that protected me. And my leadership journey actually started innocuously enough by joining a volunteer committee for a fundraiser. That's actually my origin story. And I got into fundraising and I love this feeling of community. I'd always been so interested in committee work and working together, and it was very organic for me. And I found out that I had great leadership skills. Surprise, surprise, because to your intro, I was collaborative. I could listen to other people's opinions. I made sure every voice was included. And through that process, I got heavily involved in fundraising. I spent 15 years as a fundraising consultant, supporting senior leaders in the force, in the not for profit world, but also international business leaders who were on my boards of directors. And there I saw some great role models for leadership, but also some challenging role models for leadership, Pearl. And at some point along the way, I decided that my role or my contribution in the world could be empowering others to use their seat at the table.
I love that. That's incredible. Now, was there a time when you robbed yourself out of confidence by trying to lead the way by modeling yourself after
Oh, Jill,
following others,
God.
right? So how did that work out for you?
Oh, I mean, for your listeners, right? We all take a look at what's around us for models of leadership. And then, when we grow up, we try things on. And so the time that I remember that the best response for that question, Pearl, is I became chair of the board of directors. It had been a very tumultuous experience, and I finally arrived in as chair. And I tried to lead in a way that I had seen modeled before me. And so we look to, I mean, most of our role models, Pearl, are men. Let's start there, right? With a very autocratic, sort of top-down, authoritative approach. And then even if we look at the women models, and I'm talking a couple of years ago, we didn't have our new, Prime Minister of New Zealand and some of those other women models. But even the folks like Angela Merkel or Hillary Rodham Clinton, very masculine
Yes.
energy, right? So
Yes.
I started off my role with this sort of masculine energy, not being able to show weakness, not wanting to talk about where I wasn't clear, really kind of brittle would be the word I would use. And what I found was A, it was exhausting, B, it was inauthentic, and most importantly, it wasn't effective. And it took a bit of a crisis in my life, to be honest, and a couple of panic attacks. I'm trying to be really open and honest about how uncomfortable this was for my body to realize that I had to go back to the beginning and find something that was truly me and stop those nasty voices in my head that were telling me that I was doing everything completely wrong.
Right. And that's really, I feel like it's very true because when we see, especially back in the years, and now, I mean, we still have problems, but we've improved a lot. But you were meant like if you were going to be in this CEO position, you had to be very masculine. You couldn't really, you were overcompensating because you were a female. So you had to, be the man because there wasn't that many females, correct? So with that being said, you couldn't be authentic, you couldn't be real. You were kind of known as like, I guess if you were more bitchy, you were more powerful, right? And you couldn't really connect with the people who you work with. So if you don't have that relationship, because leadership doesn't mean that you're just going to be bossy and, just giving people work to do and not really working with them. There's no collaboration. That's not what leadership is about. And that's what the mistake is a lot of the time is where people think that that's, you just have people working, underneath you and you're really tough. And when you connect with your employees and you're making that connection, you have that positive environment in the workplace. That's where people want to work and do something good for you because they actually have that connection with you. They have a relationship with you and they respect you a lot more.
Oh, totally. And let's just look at the leadership competencies. The number one correlation for leadership success is relatedness, your ability to relate to others. So also, as you move up the food chain, you become less and less of a the subject matter expert, Pearl. You cannot know everything. And so you must be relying on your team to bring their best ideas forward, not the other people's ideas and not your ideas, because there just isn't enough of your own ideas there. And here's the final kicker is that when you transcend that experience, when you can actually let the people on your team be the leaders they were meant to be, it opens up this whole new capacity for them. The caveat being collaboration does not always mean consensus. So while we collaborate and we seek discussion, we do need to make decisions as women leaders. And I've seen that too often, Pearl, where folks sort of we sort of collaborate to the lowest common denominator. And at the end of the day, we are leaders.
Right. Right. So that's the opposite side. If you know, and if you don't believe that you can make the right decisions and then you show yourself in that inferior position, then you are no longer a leader and then you won't get that respect either for, being in that role but not fulfilling that role.
Yeah,
So it's
and I think
super
we're yeah, but I'm gonna flag it because I think a lot of women think that that is success, and I want to explain that leadership is can be difficult, and we have to put our let's call them our big girl pants on to have those brave conversations to get our points across. I see too many women sitting on the sidelines, not bothering to make the effort, Pearl, or spending a lot of time saying, well, that's a terrible idea and I'm not going to follow along. That doesn't serve anybody either.
That's very true. Very. Now, speaking of confidence, what does, because that's very important
Mhm.
to when you're in a leadership position, but what does confidence mean to you personally, and how has your understanding of that word evolved for you?
So it's interesting. Okay, in my work, in my practice, I can't tell you, I would say almost every woman that I meet says, I want to work on my confidence and my executive presence. And I immediately say, well, okay, let's break that down. What does that mean to you? Right? What does confidence mean to you? And my modern definition for confidence has become this. Confidence is the knowing, not that you know everything, but that no matter what's put in your path, you have the confidence and the wherewithal within you to figure it out. And that gives me great comfort. No matter what happens, Pearl, I'm going to be okay. I can figure it out and I can trust my own instincts. That's confidence. That's rich, deep, grounded confidence.
Very grounded. And I completely agree with you. I mean, being a coach myself, and I deal with more empowerment, and that's the key. Like it's really getting these women to realize that they can be confident, they have to believe in themselves, and they have to be aware of who they are. Because once you have no idea who you are and you're lacking that, like what you're saying, like knowing, okay, this is not going the right way, but what am I going to do? How am I going to deal with this situation? That's empowerment right there, and that's your confidence. So
That's so true. And I think one of the little triggers for me, and this might help your listeners, is am I coming from a place of curiosity or am I coming from a place of defense? Because I think a lot of women have been come through the ranks assuming they have to defend their positions. You're nodding. Tell me more, because that obviously lands with you.
I feel like, there's a lot of insecurities and they feel intimidated and immediately they want to defend themselves. So that's where it's coming from instead
Yeah.
of actually asking the questions and being curious, like, how can I do better? What can I do? It's like immediately they're on the fence.
Yeah. And as soon as you're on defense, you've disengaged from your frontal cortex, right? So you've no longer have access to your thinking. So you know that feeling where you don't know what to say? It's real, right? As soon as your body feels that flight mode, it's going to go into protection mode. So how do you address that? Coaching, you work on your breath work, you make sure you remind yourself of how to keep yourself grounded in meetings that might have conflict in them. You take a look at your backstory. What stories do I own about conflict and speaking my voice that are deep, deep rooted that I need to take a look at and ask myself, do they serve me any longer? And I don't want to make light of the fact that for many women, speaking up represents a risk to safety. And we have to sort of unpack that before we're able to truly own our voice at the table.
It's very true. Very good way to put it. In what ways? Now I know you do a lot of not-for-profit, right? And it's interesting how because it's not non-profit because I kept looking at that. I'm like, did I write that right? Did I, but how, as a consultant, shape your growth as a leader, and how did it come
Mm.
together in your decision to write your book? And we'll be talking about that soon too. So how
You
did that all
bet.
come together? Or how
Yeah.
did you even
So
get into this? Because I know you said, in your bio, you were in piano, right? So tell us about that.
I love that. So I literally fell into fundraising, raising money for pianos at the conservatory where I was teaching in New York City, Pearl. So I lived and worked in New York City for 11 years, and I always knew I had other skills. And also I was such a social person. I just couldn't imagine being in a practice room by myself for 4 hours a day. I just like I was always the person like looking for people to talk to. And I loved watching systems work. And so I've literally joined a fundraising committee at the conservatory where I was working, and they said, well, I wanted to raise money for the pianos for the students. And they said, well, we'd have to fundraise. And I said, okay, so how do we do that? Da 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 da. And basically, love this idea. If you've ever joined a board or you've been a volunteer, your sense of community, your sense of purpose is so heightened. And I was hooked on the drug of making the world a better place. And I got in, so that's the original stepping into fund development. And it actually parallels interestingly with my skills as a musician were all about self-discipline, responsibility, commitment to my craft. I was very curious. It's a very personally driven experience to be a musician. Nobody's like telling you anything. So I felt it was a great setup for entrepreneurship, to be honest, because I've always worked for myself. And so that sort of, let's call it drive, some might call it stubbornness, depending on who you're talking to. But I always had that in droves. The focus switched from music to helping people make the world a better place. And that's actually the story. I have a master's and a doctorate degree in piano performance from two schools in New York City.
You still play the piano or teach it?
I I do not. I taught until about 10 years ago when my children were born. That really changed. I'm sure you talk about that a lot, my sort of trajectory and my path. And I sort of couldn't keep in shape, to be perfectly frank. Like you need a certain amount of time. I
Continues.
do regret it. Yeah, I do regret it. And I've sort of left myself open to this third chapter of my life as my children sort of are leaving the house. I think I'm curious, is what I'd say. I have an accordion that I've bought.
That's a first step, right? To get
Yep.
back into music.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I think that the baggage sort of that's attached to the piano and the expectations might be hard because I'm always have this standard from being a classical musician that I won't be able to attain anymore.
I think that's that biggest problem. I mean, especially as females, when you have those high expectations and you were this, incredible piano player, it's like you have all these degrees. You don't want to just go there and play for fun. And so you have to let those go and you have to just say, I'm going to do this because now it can just be a fun hobby and just release yourself from the expectations. And then I think you won't be fearful. You'll be more curious and excited.
Yeah.
So
And I love that. And I think I'm hoping that my background in music will help me learn the accordion quicker because I'm a bit competitive, I'm not going to lie. And I also like the idea that the accordion is movable. Like the problem with the piano is it's static. And
yeah,
I think, Pearl, now I'm being very accountable on this podcast. I'm going to have to get back to you on it, that I could bring joy, right? Because I could play the accordion and move around. And that's what music should be about.
that's what it is exactly. It just brings you happiness. I love music. I mean, I don't play an instrument. Never, that never happened in my lifetime. I always wanted to, and I even thought about I signed up all three of my kids for piano. So I have three kids. The two girls kind of gave up after a while. It was a lot of fighting, like, have you practiced? Have you practiced? My son is still continuing it, but I think it was kind of for me, I kind of let go and he loves to play the drum. He plays all sorts of different percussions. That's his main passion, and it's his stress releaser. But now that I made the piano kind of like an optional thing, he seems to enjoy it a lot better. And he actually wanted. He's like, "Oh, can I actually have a teacher again? I wouldn't mind doing recitals." So I'm like, "You've come this long." He's 14. I'm like, "You've been doing this, like continuing it. So like in 10 years from now, you're going to be excited that you can still play an instrument, right?" I
Yeah.
guess living through our kids. It was something I wanted to,
Yeah.
didn't get the opportunity.
And I think the piece there to flag, even from a leadership perspective, is motivation. Understanding where the motivation comes from, whether it's your kids or your employees, not making the assumption that your motivation is the same as theirs. Right?
That's the key because when you do that, then you're missing the whole point, and it becomes it doesn't meet the like if that's what he wants to do, but I change it for him, and the motivation changes. It's no longer his pathway, and then you're gonna have rejection, and that could be the same way in a leadership work environment.
100%.
So, what I know you do executive coaching. If you can explain to our listeners what that means and how do you coach from compassion, as you call it?
And you smiled when you said compassion. I love that. So for women, that is a natural state, right? Not that men aren't compassionate, just to be clear, but I think we tend to, if I'm stereotyping, lead from a place of warmth, a place of understanding, because our world is very differently structured than men. The executive coaching that I do, and why I call it executive coaching, is that I found, first of all, I'll be blunt, it was a lot easier for organizations to invest in it when it was called executive coaching. And it absolutely supports the organization. And that's why I believe all organizations should have a coaching budget for their senior leadership team and down. That being said, executive coaching, you do not change who you are from stepping out of the boardroom into your car and going to pick up takeout on the way home and meet with your partner. And so I really challenge this idea that we are one person at work and one person at home. The coaching I do is very much at the intersection of life and leadership because the patterns you created will spill over into everything.
So true.
For So true, right? I mean, you can't just it's impossible. And I always joke that the people that have not had either therapy or coaching, they're walking around the boardroom in their 5-year-old selves, acting like the personality they were, throwing those 5-year-old tantrums or sulking at,
All the
right?
tantrums, yes.
It's true. And I wish it wasn't, but it is. And so that journey of enlightenment, because our jobs as leaders are to grow ourselves so that we can support others. Executive coaching is great one-on-one, and I love that very personalized, very intimate. We set up goals for our time together, and then inside each of our coaching calls has a contract as well, a commitment to a certain goal. The second area that I think coaching can really help is what we call masterminds in the business world, group coaching scenarios. So there may be a component, I have one called the penthouse, where there's a training component, Pearl, but there's also a sharing component and a support component. Every time I've run this penthouse, it's funny. I've been doing these group coachings now for about 5 years. And when I seek feedback on them and when I look at the survey results, yes, the training is important. Yes, the strategies and the in-person, like the on real-time sort of examples. But this thing that people always highlight is their experience of imparting knowledge or sharing their learnings with someone else, how incredibly powerful that is for them to realize what they've learned and what they've accomplished, going back to your word about confidence. And they always highlight that for me. I don't think we have a lot of containers in our busy world for acknowledging for ourselves how far we've come and how much we do know.
Yeah, and it's all about that connection, the collaboration, and having that safe community to share. And in that environment, you're going to evolve and you're going to grow because you're learning. It's like one thing that I was doing wrong, someone else, make sure that it's like, well, how about trying this? And you're like, wait, I didn't think about that, but there's no judgment, there's no shame to it. It's a safe environment to learn from each other. So,
Yeah. And they show up so deeply for each other because they're peers and they
yeah.
deeply care. And also that messaging, like you said, really lands. People remember it and regardless of what happens in that group coaching, you are forever changed because you can never go back to not knowing.
I think that's really neat. I wish that every corporation, every work environment would make this like a mandatory thing. I think it would really, change things down and it would trickle down to a very positive work environment. And that's the key. I mean, You notice it. I mean, anywhere you go, you can go to a restaurant, and if, the servers are all like arguing with each other, and it's like, I don't care how good the food is, like that energy comes down to me, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to go back. And what does that mean for that whole place? That means there's a lot of conflict going on, which isn't really good as far as management goes. So it just, it goes back to the very top, and you realize that the whole system is wrong. Right. So then you're like, forget the food. I don't want to go back there again.
And culture has a smell. You can smell it, you can feel it the minute you walk in.
Very true. Very true. Now let's talk about your book, Embracing Ambition. What prompted you to write it, and what does embracing ambition mean to you? And what inspired you to bring all these other leaders to help you write the story?
Yeah. So let me set the scene for the book because you need to know I've been thinking about this for a long time, as many books, I'm sure there's folks out there listening thinking about a book. And every time I got close to getting a structure for the book, I tried multiple times to put the structure together. And I'll be honest, Pearl, it was like, oh, this is so boring. I don't want to do this by myself. Like it felt we're going back to piano and being in a room by myself
Yes,
to
I was
write
going to
this
say,
thing.
you didn't want to be by yourself.
And I also felt in this modern world, who am I to be one more woman to share her version of events and stories? And I wanted this to be about what it felt to lead. So, not like the textbook version of what you're supposed to do, but actually how it felt to take on those first leadership roles and talk about some of the uncertainty and some of the lack of confidence. And so, what I did was I reached out to some of my colleagues, some folks I knew. It's a group of 12 women. Some of them I did not know at all. I knew them just peripherally through LinkedIn. I wanted to have lots of voices represented. And I will say some of the women are not for profit, some of them are corporate, some of them run their own businesses. It's a really nice mixture. And they come to this book with very different perspectives. And I think that really is the beauty and the depth. The book marries the research on women's leadership. So there are 5 pillars of the research, which, if you've been a woman in leadership, you identify with so many of them. And then inside those pillars are the first person stories of the women. So that's kind of the container for the book. And just sidebar, we actually met in Toronto, Canada in person. We all came in from North America because we've got some Americans and some Canadians. And we drafted the outlines of these stories together. So that's the book. Okay, you want to talk about the title?
Sure.
So, have you ever tried to pick a title with 12 type A women?
That I cannot even imagine how that would go.
Exactly. And I am in this role. I'm leading these women, providing guidance. And so I trusted the universe to do some testing. And I always knew the word ambition was going to be in there, Pearl, I just knew it. It was the word for me. And it was this idea earlier you mentioned reclaiming ambition. How come ambition has become a dirty word? How can we take it back? For me, the word ambition is about going after something unabashedly in your own style, in your own way, to whatever desired success that looks like. Not everybody has to be a CEO. That's not everybody's goal in life. But if there is a passion, a dream, a spark that you have, it is your responsibility to honor that ambition. And so I knew that part was going to be in there. And then the first part of the word, I had a bunch of things. I had becoming ambition, I had empowering ambition, I had reclaiming ambition. And it was interesting to see the feedback from the younger generation and the older generation too. The younger folks thought, just keep it simple, ambition, just one word. My older folks were like, oh, I like this idea of embracing. Like, can we bring our femininity back to this word? And so the title itself has actually become kind of a calling card, like embracing ambition, bringing people into this new style of leadership. And for that, I'm quite proud of, but it was a process for sure. And bringing everyone around in a gentle way, I think that's where we have this ability to lead without a big stick. We are very versed in influence.
I think you chose the right word. From all the words that you mentioned, I love embracing, and it is feminine. And I feel like just the fact that all of you ladies were together and you were bonding, that's just like a wonderful title to add on to that. Like you embraced all your knowledge together and you're sharing it with the world. So very good
Mm.
title. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, what are some key challenges, Jenny, that women often face during their first year in leadership? And
Oh,
I'm sure
yeah.
lots of challenges, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I work with a lot of first-time leaders. I would say coaches come in really powerfully. You talked about empowerment, right? So coming out of their own shell, understanding who they are and what they stand for. I find a lot of women work with coaches at the beginnings and in transitions in their life. So that first VP role, that first leadership role, that first CEO role. And so some of the barriers that people encounter. One of them is, and this one's actually in the book, is I like to call it perception barriers. You might know it as imposter syndrome. I don't
Yeah.
like imposter syndrome because I find it's very passive, like, oh, it's happening to me, this syndrome. I prefer perception barriers that the way I'm perceived is not in line with the way I traditionally see positions of leadership. So you will be perceived as not having these qualities of leadership that are sort of nebulous and vague. It's almost like you have to prove that you are worthy of that spot.
Right. Right.
And that's a really unfortunate thing. I want to also just send a shout out to our visible minorities. Like, you think it's hard for a woman, it's triple hard for a Black woman or a woman of Asian descent because you don't fit the mold. And you will have to fight that, Pearl. And I guess fight's maybe the wrong word. You will have to address it and you will have to be mindful of, listen to the way I'm speaking. I don't know if you could hear my voice changing. You will have to address it in a very head-on way, or else you won't be as effective as a leader. So that's one of them.
Okay.
It's one of them.
Thank you
I
for
can
sharing.
give you more.
You can, yeah, I
Like,
mean, I guess they have to get your book to get more, right?
I love it. And it is
That's one
available
way to
on that.
suspense.
That's right. And it is available on Amazon. I just want to say it's called Embracing Ambition and it's available on Amazon.
Perfect, perfect. Now, how can tuning into the signals from your body help you lead more authentically? Like how knowing who you are, being authentic to yourself, what are we looking for?
Hmm. Oh, goodness, body language, right? We think we have a poker face and we don't. So let's start from a place of strength. Women have superpowers. They can tell, yeah, right? They can tell what's going on at the dinner table. They can tell what's going on at the boardroom. They can see who's unhappy. They can see, right? You're nodding. That's a natural superpower. Okay. The downside of that superpower is we are hyper aware of our own feelings as well. And so the reason you bring up that question is that my story in the book, I have a story in the book, is about panic attacks. And my body was trying to tell me something, was trying to tell me that the way I was leading was not working for me, was causing great stress, and it was not the solution I was seeking. And
Is that
just for
when you were following the other, right? You were following others and
yes,
not being your own authentic self, right? Sorry to interrupt you.
100, no,
In there, yeah.
exactly, exactly. Trying to be someone I wasn't. And it's amazing how your logical brain will kick in, right, Pearl? Because we as women, matter of fact, I have a theory that smart women, this is particularly a challenge for smart women because they've gotten where they've gotten to because of their brains and their smarts. And somewhere along the line, they left their body behind, and their body's going, I can't take this. I can't take this. Right? And so we almost have to relearn or unlearn, I guess, what our body is telling us because our emotions are like little flags. Yoo-hoo, this doesn't feel right. Yoo-hoo, something's out of alignment here. We've been so busy pushing and repressing those emotions because they're not welcome in the boardroom. Anybody who's had a challenge with crying, I just want to say I used to be a very big crier. Anything that was very emotional would just pour out. And the fear of crying is worse than the crying, by the way. So when you repress things, and the shift I've made, and this may be helpful to your listeners, is what are the tears telling you? What are those emotions telling you? And you can trust your body. There is nothing that isn't your biggest champion than your body. And your gut is actually attached to your mental health and your mental wellness in your brain. That gut has microbes and things that we now know from the research affect all your mental health and your mental wellness, right?
Yes, yes. That's why we keep saying, like, listen, what is that gut feeling telling you, right? It's like, and as women, I mean, we're very intuitive. We just have to learn to be aware and listen to what the body's telling us instead of repressing it, which, that's the biggest problem right there. And
Yeah.
then you have all these other issues because your body will keep score. And it's like if you keep going to the boardroom and you know like what they're saying is wrong and you keep going home, it's like, oh my gosh, like I have this horrible backache for like weeks now. It's because you need to use your voice and
That's
speak
right.
up. Yeah,
Yeah,
to release it.
and I think, it's a misnomer to think that the first time you speak up, it's going to be perfect.
It
I
won't.
think, yeah, it's going to be messy. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be choppy. I mean, my first podcast was crap, right? But I got better.
I'm right there with you. When I look back and I was so nervous, like it was just you could tell, right? Yeah.
I know. And so I mean, that sounds so cliche, but getting more comfortable with being out uncomfortable and also seeking allies in the room. Like, I think one of the biggest missed opportunities for women leaders is to invite people in the room or on the boardroom to act as allies. So speaking to them and saying, "Hey, I'm looking for some feedback on my communication style and my delivery. Would you mind being one of my allies in the room? And if I could seek your feedback afterwards for how it went and what I could improve." That is such first of all, a brave move, but also shows great leadership that you are open to feedback. And it can really I mean, in the corporate world, it is a politics game, right, Pearl? I mean, it's a total, I call it this spidering that's going on behind the scenes. And consciously bringing a couple of those allies along can be super helpful for you.
What a great advice. I would never think of that. I think that's wonderful. And it takes so much courage and being brave to actually say that. And being open to feedback just shows that you already have leadership skills and are able to take, constructive criticism and become better and grow.
And it really changes the dynamic from, hey, I want to move up in your company to, hey, I want to move up for my own personal growth, and I'm ready and open to receiving any suggestions you might have. Very different messaging.
Very, very different messaging for sure. Now, with everything, I mean, how it's really hard because I know we slip into burnout, right? In that corporate world, in that leadership role, it's challenging. So, what advice do you give your clients as far as prioritizing self-worth in leadership roles and being able not to fall into that level of saying yes to everything and just crashing and burning out?
Mm. Well, I'd have to come back on your podcast in another year to give you. I want to just honor the challenge, first of all. I don't want to sit here at a podcast and say you just do this because I think it is a work in progress. There are a couple things that have helped me. I want to remind folks from the research, because this is in the book, this concept of embodied roles. Women tend to embody the roles they take on. They over identify with the role, and it becomes so much more a proportion of their self worth, self identity, especially because they fought so freaking hard to get there. So, just that knowledge of how you are overly relying on your identity at work. That's one. Just that awareness of it, Pearl. Number two, there is no work life balance. The new phrase I'm using is work life integration, how your life integrates with your work. And so for some of us that pick up kids at 4 o'clock, 4:30, that's going to mean getting up earlier, right? And it's going to have a more different ebb and flow. It does not mean that you work all night because you weren't able to do XYZ during the day. But I do think that our lives are a lot more integrated than they ever were before. I'm not a big fan of the word boundaries because I'm crap at them. But what I am good at, and here's what I have learned is I like I'm a workaholic. I love work. I love talking. I love sharing. I love being an executive coach. I could do it all day. But the problem is there's nothing left for the life bucket when I do that. And so I very consciously have a turn off switch that usually involves taking the dog for a walk at 5 o'clock and or I book something with myself that I have to be at. And sports is great for that. Girlfriends, visits with girlfriends, dates with my partner or my kids, but something that's in the calendar, Pearl, that requires me to step off the computer. And I do kind of do a bit of a time audit every 2, 3 months to take a look. How many hours am I putting into volunteer work? How many hours am I putting into my own work? I actually don't mind working on the weekends, which people are always shocked at. But if it's Sunday morning, the house is quiet, I have a cup of coffee, and there's one project. Somebody told me one time, Jenny, you get to decide when something's done. And I've never forgotten that because you know what it is, right? We change the goalpost, Pearl. We think
Yeah.
we're doing this, right?
Yes, yes.
So on Sunday mornings, I might pick one project and all I have to do is that one project. I don't open in emails, I don't do anything, and I feel good. I feel good about the work that I've done. So
Start the week.
that's how I'm integrating life and work these days as a modern woman. And granted, I don't have little kids at home because I just want to send my heart out to those people that are doing it all. And
I love integration and what you're saying. I can relate because I'm not very good. I really work hard at boundaries. I set a timer, like, okay, I need to be done, but I really like the time audit. Like, that's what I need to do to make sure that when I do an assessment of my life, that it's balanced in the way that I want it to be and not geared. Because again, like with my job, with the podcast, I'm constantly talking. Coaching, I'm constantly talking, and you're smiling, talking. And the networking, you're constantly talking. And so sometimes I feel bad. Like when it's like my poor husband says, like, how are you? And I'm like, I just don't want to talk anymore. Is it okay? And I honestly don't. I just want like quiet. I don't want to smile. My cheeks are hurting. And so I get it. And it's really hard to figure that out. As much as I love what I do, I have to. And I do the same thing. I try my best to schedule that joy time, I call it. Like there's and I tried to say like it's a joy day, but again, so many things in life happen where obviously that joy hour or joy day automatically it's like, oh, I need to do that. Okay, it's okay. I'll just eliminate my fun activity because I need to squeeze in this other appointment. Something I'm still working on, even as a coach. I'm guilty, I admit it, because again, I'm trying to do it all. And I mean, my kids are 20, 17, and 14, almost. So they're older, they're independent, but they still need me. They're still around, and it's a crucial part of their life. And I don't want to miss a moment because I know any moment they'll all be gone. So that's that part that I'm always dealing with too, because I want to be successful in my work, but I want to be there for every single thing. And as moms, this is a battle that it's never
yeah,
ending, right?
yeah. I think as I get older, the concept of presence, and I spent a lot of my beginning years, I'm not particularly proud of having one foot in both buckets at the same time. And I've really, really learned that that doesn't serve anybody. It doesn't serve my kids and it doesn't serve my business. I'm also learning that in order to honor, we just did it, work and kids. We didn't even mention ourselves, right?
That's at the very end. And then there's, the partner, the husband, the dog.
I
So
know.
that continues. But yes, for sure to add on to that, being present in the moment, I think that's the only thing that's helping me survive. Like years ago, when I was with my kids, I'd be worried about what I have to
Mhm.
do. Or if I'm at work, I'm worried about, but now I'm really just life makes you learn that, there's mortality, there's things that come and go, and life is going by so quickly. So when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids now. If I'm with my husband, it's like just I have as long as I'm present, I feel like that's the only way I survive and I'm enjoying life and really enjoying the moments, right? Because those are precious moments.
Yeah, I love that you said enjoying too, because that I get to have tonight off and hang out with my kids on the sofa, right? That's not an exciting night for me, but it's an important night. And if I have to watch some crazy teenage show. Like I make myself do it because
Yes,
I
yes.
get to do this,
It's
right?
it's so true when you say this, Jen, because my daughter is actually home from college and she loves to like watch like reruns of some, I don't know, it can be like the OC or whatever show. And before I'd be like, oh my gosh, here we go. Like she's gonna hog the TV. It's gonna be like a back to back binging, you know. And then lately though, like the past few days, I'm like, this is limited. Like she's only here for a little bit. Before I know it, she'll be living on her own. So it's okay. I will binge along with her. And whenever this show comes up, I will remember these days because they're not going to be forever. So it's like changing that perspective where before I'd be like, oh my God, seriously, are you really going to do this? Like you've watched this before. Why do we have to watch it? Now I just sit with her and I watch it. So it's like changing yourself and realizing again, being present about life.
I
So
love that we've brought in our families, right? Because I think as women, I just can't imagine talking about my career without in relation to my family. It's so funny. I mark my decades of my career through my children's ages. It's so integrated. By the way, men don't do that. I've been on business trips with men and it's a very strange experience because I want to talk about my family because that's what grounds me. And they're like, why is she telling us these
they want to
things?
talk about like the football game that
Sports.
we watched last night, right? That's it.
I know.
That is so true how different we are. I totally I get that. My husband's completely like that too. Even when I talk, I'm like, well, what did your friends say? He's like, oh, we didn't even talk about that. We just talked, it's like they're talking politics, stock market, finances, and sports. And they might not even know who does what for a job or what's going on with someone's. I'm like, they're just getting a divorce. He never mentioned anything. I don't know anything about it.
I know. I know. I'd love to be a fly on the wall on the locker in the locker rooms, eh? They have a bit more of like a banter. They seem to have like a banter experience, and yeah, I think it's interesting that women tend to connect and go deep quite quickly. We find our networks, so we support each other. I believe that's probably through biology and actually just brain wiring as well.
Yeah, and we like to talk. I feel like they like to like play sports. Like that's their stress release versus
Yep,
like with me, like I want to, you know, have a cup of coffee with a friend and tell her what's going on with my life. That's
yep.
my stress release, right? So it's interesting. So let me see. Let me ask you one. I have more questions, but we're running out of time. Why do women in leadership often place their sense of value in the hands of others? And how can they reclaim control over their own worth? I feel like that's an important question to end with.
Wow. Wow. So I have seen it, and I'm sure you have too, so many times where women think there's an implicit understanding with their boss of something, a portfolio that's going to be given to them, of something that's going to happen, or some tacit understanding of how something's going to go. And lo and behold, that boss moves on and the expectation is not met, and people are deeply, deeply hurt, right? And so there's a couple of things to remember from this message and from this story. And this is the whole number two to number one, this whole transition from number two to number one. Number two, you make everybody else look good. Number one, you're there to amplify and to actually take up space and lead. So you cannot, if you are a political being in an organization and you are ambitious, you cannot only have exposure to one VP or one person. You need to find a way to have other people that see your contributions, your worth, and your competencies. So often women put their worth and their next career move in the hands of somebody else. And I say, take it back. Nobody's going to watch out for you the way you were going to watch out for your salary, your career, your trajectory, and your next job. And that can feel really, we've been taught to wait on the sidelines, right? We've been taught to be polite. We've been taught to wait our turn to talk, right? And that we will be eventually rewarded in some future state that never seems to happen. And so I like to use the feminine approach when it comes to this. So there's a couple of phrases that work, if I were to apply for a job, a position, at that caliber, what would be some of the things you would be looking for? Seeking advice, I think, is another great one. Offering to do special portfolio projects. I also think women typically don't get enough breadth of experience. They stay a little too long typically in a role. And so they wait till they're super competent in the role before they move on. And it will do you a disservice long term because if you're trying to get like the new statistics is interesting on banking. So banking is one of the hardest ones for a woman to be a CEO in. And if you look at the research and the data, what happens is they get pegged in on marketing. They end up as VP marketing. And if you're going to be a bank CEO, you actually have to have a variety, a breadth of experience. You've got to have been in finance, you got to have been in sales, you got to have been in the project management. And I think that's a really important thing to remember is you're not building the career for the organization, you're building the career for yourself. And somehow women get that. We're more of like contributors, right, Pearl? Like we want to contribute to the whole, but you can contribute to the whole and own and map out your next steps. Last comment, if you were going to go on a trip, you wouldn't just blindly get on a plane. You would take a look at where you wanted to go, even if you weren't completely sure where you wanted to go. Like, I'm not saying you have to have a clear vision of what the next job, but you would take a look at where you wanted to go and then you would start to map your journey. And it doesn't have to be fancy and it doesn't have to involve a coach, but you have to have an inkling and you have to start collecting data towards it. But the if them phrase, if I was to get that kind of experience, then do you think I would be a good candidate? May I ask, asking permission, may I ask, what is it about my portfolio or my credentials that's most important to you for this role? Very soft, very feminine language. It does work, Pearl.
So the key is not to get stuck, have an idea of where you want to move up to, and use your voice and your feminine ways to kind of seek out advice, feedback, and move up the ladder.
I love
That's
that. We're planting seeds, right, Pearl?
Yes, exactly. So as we close today's conversation with Jenny, we're reminded that embracing ambition isn't about ego or just climbing a ladder. It's about owning our potential and refusing to shrink to fit outdated expectations. Jenny's stories and insights challenge us to rethink what leadership looks like and who gets to lead. If you're a woman with a vision, a dream, or a calling, ask yourself these questions. What does ambition mean to me? Where am I holding back and why? What would I do if I truly believed I was already enough? The biggest obstacle often isn't the world telling us no. It's that quiet voice we keep talking about inside you that wonders, am I enough? Jenny reminds us that the answer is yes. Leadership isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, being seen, and choosing courage over comfort. It's about shifting the view of ambition from negative to necessary, a driving force for meaningful leadership. Let Jenny's be your reminder. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to lead. And most importantly, you are ready. Jenny, thank you so much for being on Female Fluence. Is there anything else you would like to share with us today?
I love that ending. I just remind folks that no one will take care of your career better than you will.
So you have to be your own advocate. Exactly. All the links will be in my show notes, and you can look in there to find out more about Jenny and also order Jenny's book. Thank you so much, Jenny.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you for spending this time with me here on Female Fluence, where we rise, reflect, and remember who we are. If something from today's episode spoke to you, share it with another woman who's ready to rise too. And before you go, download your free empowerment coaching guide at femalefluence.com. It's your next step toward living with more clarity and confidence. You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at pearlmashure_femalefluence. And if you're ready for deeper support, sign up for a free discovery call. I would love to connect with you. Remember, my friends, don't just exist. Live your life fully, bravely, and in truth. I'm Pearl Mashure, and until next time, stay true, stay powerful, and stay you.